5 make or break, do or die players for the Gophers in 2024. And where does Max Brosmer rank among the transfer quarterbacks coming into the Big Ten? He's up there. We'll talk about it.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
What is up, y'all? You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're talking a lot of Gophers football, but a little bit of Gophers basketball, women's side as well. Got to dive into it all. So we're going to talk about who are the 5 make or break players for the Golden Gophers in the 2024 football season. The season rides on these guys' shoulders, and if they can bring the success and the high-end play, then the Gophers can have a successful year. So I'm going to break down who my top 5 players are. Then we're going to move over to where exactly Max Brosmer ranks among the transfer quarterbacks coming into the Big Ten. There are a number of transfer quarterbacks coming in that could maybe play or could be very significant backup roles. 11 transfer quarterbacks coming in, and Max Brosmer is definitely up there for those guys coming in. And then finally, we'll talk about the Gophers women's basketball season and how they are moving onwards to the next year and what they need to add this offseason. So sit back, relax, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of your daily Gophers content moving forward. But let's dive into some football. But before we get into that, I do want to wish good luck to Purdue. The Boilermakers are playing tonight, probably starting here in just under 10-15 minutes from when I'm recording this. And you know what? If they can pull off the championship, they will be the first Big Ten school to win the national championship in basketball for the first time in decades. So hopefully Purdue can make that happen. But let's dive into the 5 make or break players for the Gophers in Minnesota in 2024. And so what does that look like? Who are the 5 players that this season hinges on for the 2024 season? And it's a big season because not only are you coming off a down year, coming off an under 500 year, but you're heading into the new Big Ten, and how you start and how you position yourself in that new Big Ten landscape could have long-term implications with recruiting and TV deals and what have you. It could have impacts on the transfer portal moving forward, who has interest in coming to your school. So how you position yourself, how you produce in this first year of the new Big Ten is going to be huge for not only the Gophers, but every team in the Big Ten. So hopefully Minnesota can have its best season in quite some time. And we need 5 players to really step up and bring their best. Kind of cheated a little bit here. I have 6 players. I have 2 people tied at slot number 5. So let's jump into number 5. And that slot tied with 2 players, one on each side of the ball, is Justin Wally and Daniel Jackson. And I think both of these players are critical for the Gophers in this upcoming season because Daniel Jackson led the wide receiver room for back-to-back years. He's led the pass catching room for back-to-back years, not only in receptions, not only in yardage, but touchdowns as well last year. Now, the year prior, I don't believe he led in touchdowns, but he still had the receptions and the yardage. He has been the leader, the staple of that passing game for the Gophers, and he really took a step forward last year, especially in his route running, especially in creating separation. And I think he can go even further with quarterback play that is more accurate. So if he can step up and keep creating separation, he can be a huge player in making sure the Gophers' offensive attack doesn't become stagnant or stale. He was a lot of the life and blood of it last year, and he can take it even further this year. And then on the flip side, Justin Wally had a struggle year last year. Plain and simple. His first 2 years, he has had a lot of success in the Big Ten. Last year, he still played, I believe, all the games, but he had a couple injuries within the games and whatnot. So his focus has been getting his body right, getting strong enough, getting durable enough to last for the whole season and really bounce back. And I think he can do just that. I think he can bounce back, and he can be one of the better corners in the entire Big Ten Conference. But how he does that, if he can really step up, if he can start to island and blanket and shut down some of these Big Ten wide receivers and really help bring down opponents' passing games, that will help the Gophers team immensely. So those two kind of on the opposite sides of the spectrum, but in a similar vein, are my fifth most important make or break Gophers for this season. Now, heading into number 4 on the make or break Gophers is Jah Joyner. Now, Jah Joyner took a massive step with Coach Winston DeLaTiviere last year. He went from 1 sack the year prior to 7.5 sacks, creating absolute pressure in back-to-back years, but getting home on that pressure. Now, if he can take it even up a notch further and start to be an absolute game changer, a guy that takes and ruins game plans for the opposing offenses, and people have to add and double protect and or double coverage and whatnot, and basically try to double team him, take him out of that, and it opens up opportunities for others on the team, Danny Strigo, Anthony Smith, for others to then create pressure from a different side or at a different angle, creating different, I guess, issues for the quarterback is the words I'm looking for there. If he can really be that game-changing type defensive lineman, not only will he continue to boost his NFL draft stock because NFL teams are interested and will continue to be interested in Jah Joyner, but if he can really take it to the next level, he can find himself in that Boye Mafe type category in that early second round or so, and that could be huge for him in his future, but also for the Gophers in winning in this upcoming season. So if he continues to build on those 7.5 sack numbers, continues to build on the number of pressures that he gets in there, I think he can be a monster and help this defense get back to the territories that it was in 2019 and even 2021 and 22, where they had an elite defense, even when the offense would struggle at times. So Jah Joyner, number 4 on my most important make or break players for the Gophers. Now, coming in at number 3, another defensive player. I think the defense bouncing back is a huge key for the Gophers to have success in the 2024 season. So my number 3 player is Cody Lindenberg. Now, Cody Lindenberg is a game changer on the defensive end at the linebacker position when he is healthy, but that is the big if. That is the big asterisk. Is we need him to be there for a vast majority, if not all of the season. Now, you saw in 2022, when he can play a large chunk, he can be the second or the first leading tackler in the game, in the program, period. Like, he can be a next level type of linebacker. He flies to the ball. He's got speed. He's got power. He's got strength. He's got the intelligence to do it, but it's just remaining healthy. Now, in that 2022 season, you saw him still kind of warming up into a starter spot, but once he got into that starting role, there was no looking back. He was probably one of the best tacklers, one of the lead production players of the entire Gophers defense with Mariano Suri-Marin, and that was a huge emphasis for the Gophers defense and the success that they found. If he can bring that aspect and be that leader of the linebacker room, Maverick Baranowski can step up into his previous role. That is how you get this defense back on track. And with a new linebackers coach and defensive coordinator in Coach Heatherman, I'm expecting if Lindenberg stays healthy, he's going to have the best year of his career. And that would be massive for this Gophers defense. Now, we've got 2 players left on the 5 most make or break players for the Minnesota Gophers in the 2024 season. And my number 2 might surprise you, but it's Max Brosmer. Now, I said it might surprise you because I think many people would be like, why isn't he number 1? The quarterback, we saw what happens with quarterback play last year. If we would have had good quarterback play, we could have won the Illinois game. We could have won the Northwestern game. Our offense could have been better. We could have had a complimentary game. Like, I get it. A lot of people are like, man, if we would have had good quarterback play last year, we would have won 2 to 4 more games. And you could be right. It could be a possibility. But I think even on the flip of that, it's not just the quarterback play, but it's having your all-star talent and your difference makers. And if Max Brosmer can step up into that category and be that leader at the helm and be that right decision maker and make the layup throws and make efficient plays and not turn the ball over, he can be one of, if not the most important player for the Gophers in 2024. Now, I think that he is going to be a critical piece. I think there is an argument for him to be number 1 on this list. But I think even without the quarterback play last year, even with the struggles of it all, I think if Darius Taylor stays healthy, the Gophers get 2 to 3 more wins last year, even with the porous offense. So that's why Darius Taylor is my number 1 make or break player for the Gophers, because Darius Taylor is truly And I'm not just saying this to gas him up or amp it up or anything like that. Darius Taylor is truly a all-American level type running back. He is truly an all Big Ten first team type of running back. He is truly an NFL talented type running back. He can be a workhorse. He is opening the eyes of many players, of many analysts, of many fantasy football people out there because he could be next up, leading the entire nation in rushing yards per game last year. He also has good metrics in yards after contact, missed tackles forced, and what have you. Darius Taylor is a game changer. And I think that having that type of running back has been the bread and butter of PJ Fleck's best years here with Minnesota. Yes, the passing game helps. And I think that will only help free up how this offense wants to play, how we get the ball to our running backs. And I think having more talent in that running back room will help with his durability. And he has also been prepping to be more durable, to have better routines, to take better care of his body, have better stretching. Darius Taylor wants to be out there on the field doing everything and then some for this team. And they're going to get him in the passing game. They're going to get him his touches. They're going to get him all sorts of opportunities. And he could leave this program being one of the highest drafted running backs for the Gophers in quite some time. I mean that 100%. And I think this year could be a key to it and helping progress that. And I think this year's offense is going to run and funnel through Darius Taylor, which makes him my number one make or break player for the Gophers. Now, we're going to talk about those back to the quarterbacks. We're going to talk about the transfer quarterbacks. There are 11 of them coming into the Big Ten Conference, and how and where does Max Brosmer rank? We're diving into that coming up next. First, a quick word to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality candidates and professionals that are right for your role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs is the place to be. And they have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now, LinkedIn Jobs isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion with a B professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. And if it gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. So LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easier and more intuitive for you. That sounds like a win-win to me. And anytime I am ever looking to see what's out there, looking for a job, trying to help others when they're telling me, oh, I need a new role, I'm looking in this area, or I have experience here, or what have you, I always direct them to LinkedIn prior to me ever doing this podcast, because LinkedIn is definitely the place to be, and hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. They also know you're wearing so many different hats and have to do so many different things for your small business that you don't always have the time or the resources to hire. So they're trying to make it easier. They have new tools, that they have a new feature where it helps you write job descriptions, making the process even quicker. And 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring. So you should join that number. Post about your job for free over at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Gophers fans, we are diving into where does Max Brosmer sit among the transfer quarterbacks that are coming into the Big Ten. Now, across the 18 teams, we have 11 key quarterback transfers into the Big Ten. And that's a ton. That is a lot in this new era of college football. Now, of note, UCLA doesn't have anybody notable coming in. Nebraska doesn't have anybody notable coming in. And when I say that, I mean of transfer quarterbacks strictly, because Nebraska does have a highly touted true freshman coming in. Illinois, no notable quarterbacks. Purdue, no notable quarterbacks. Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, Northwestern, no notable quarterbacks from the portal. Now, Michigan could definitely enter that conversation if any big names come out in the second wave. But as of right now, you don't see any big names coming out. So I wonder if they just kind of stand pat. But overall, that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the Big Ten that don't have notable quarterbacks coming from the transfer portal. But that leaves 10 teams still having quarterbacks from the transfer portal. So let's go through them and how they had how their seasons looked in 2023. Now, if you look at the best quarterback coming out of the portal, in my opinion, that's Dillon Gabriel. 2023, he had an offensive grade of a 91.9 and a passing grade of a 90.6. That is phenomenal, some of the best in the country. And he proved that in his production with 68.9% completion rate, 3,655 yards, 30 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. And that was just through the air. He also was very much a threat on the ground. He will be a Heisman candidate if he is healthy, and I am a big fan of his game. I think Oregon is not going to skip a beat, even with Bo Nix heading to the NFL. I expect him to be the best quarterback in the entire Big Ten Conference, and it might not be close. So Dylan Gabriel, major props to Oregon, but they didn't get just one quarterback from the portal. They got two. Dante Moore, in his 2023 season, passing grade of 58.1, offensive grade of 56.4, both of those below average. Now, he is a young player. He was a true freshman last year. The production-wise, he had 53.3% completion, so not too hot. 1,609 yards and 11 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. So bad decision-making, not as efficient, has all the talent in the world, but definitely very, very raw. High upside, but bad in decision-making, and he won't see the field this year. He will not see the field unless there are injuries that happen, but he could be great in the long term if developed. So I wouldn't expect to see him too much this upcoming season, probably put him at 10 or 11 of these transfer quarterbacks coming in for the 2024 year and how they rank. Now you go over to Ohio State. Will Howard's coming in 2023. He had a 78.1 offensive grade and a 71.1 passing grade. So his passing grade was just barely above average. I believe average is around like 66, 67. So 71.1 pass grade, but the 78.1 offensive grade shows you just how much of a dual threat he can be. Now in the passing through the air, 60.9%, 2,630 yards, 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Now, like I said, he has that scrambling ability, and I also believe he was kind of being phased out by Kansas State, and thus why he entered the transfer portal. Avery Johnson was definitely starting to take over there, but we'll see if he can be more efficient with a better team. And if he isn't, they've got some young guys too. Julian Sand, Aaron Noland, Devin Brown is still out there with Ohio State. So if he doesn't find more efficiency and find better production, he could get phased out like he did at Kansas State, once again in Ohio State. You move on to the next quarterback in Washington, Will Rogers. 2023, his grade was a 73.3 offensive grade, 76.9 passing grade, 60% passing completion, 1,624 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Definitely down numbers for Will Rogers, who has put up massive numbers in collegiate football, but he dealt with injuries last year. One of his least productive years by far. But we've seen the upside, and he's going to a heavy passing type offense with Arizona's old coach coming over to Washington. But that being said, Washington's wide receiver room isn't the greatest. It's pretty barren right now after this NFL draft group that left their program. So he could see more struggles if that pass catching group can't live up to the standard. Now, USC brought in a transfer quarterback, but he's probably going to be the backup. Jaden Mayava, he comes from UNLV, 62.2 offensive grade, 63.1 passing grade, 63% passing, 3,071 yards last year, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Had a couple too many interceptions, in my opinion, compared to his touchdowns with how much production he was seeing last year. Now, like I said, he's probably going to be the backup for Lincoln Riley in this upcoming year for Miller Moss, who has been with the program for quite some time. But Mayava does have that dual threat ability. He can compete for the job, and he could be a very solid backup with potential that Lincoln Riley sees, obviously bringing him in. But I don't think he's going to be a starter in the season. So again, he'd probably rank towards the 10 or 11 spot for me when it comes to next year's transfer ranking quarterbacks. Michigan State brought in a big name with Aiden Childs. The upside is out of this world. 247 absolutely loved him in the transfer ranks because of that upside. But when you look at his production, 71.9 offensive grade, 65.8 passing grade, 68.8% completion last year, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Now he has a ton of upside, but he has no high level of playing time. So this is going to be a huge, can he do it at an elite level right from the jump? He's going to be thrust into that starting position. Now, he can get it done on the ground as well, but he never saw more than 14 dropbacks in any game last season, and he only had 2 games last year where he saw more than 5 dropbacks. So it's basically like a true freshman year for him, even though it will be his sophomore year. Now, Rutgers has a familiar face in Ethan Kaliakmanis. Last year, 65.2 offensive grade, 58.2 passing grade. Both of those below average, 52% from completion percentage, 1,836 yards, 14 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Now, I am a fan of Ethan Kaliakmanis and the human being that he is. I think the upside is there, but he struggled here in Minnesota. So we know the upside can be high, but we also have seen the decision-making and the layups be a struggle, and that could continue if he wins the job. That's another question. Will he win the job from Jeff Sims? That being said, he is pairing with Kirk Shiraka, who got the best out of him in the glimpses that we saw in 2022. So maybe he could be bouncing back to that more positive side, upside that we've seen. Definitely a big question there. But with the numbers of last year alone, he definitely would rank towards the back half of this grouping, along with another quarterback who did even worse when it comes to efficiency and the grading. That's MJ Morris over at Maryland. He had a 52.8 offensive grade, 52.1 passing grade, 56% from passing, 723 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Now, he is a lot more raw than I expected with all the love that he got from NC State in the media talking about this kid being the future. Now, on top of that, he has far more to go, far more to learn, and to be a productive player in a huge conference. And like, he's not in the similar spot that Talia Tagovailoa was in when he stepped in. He still was more composed, more efficient, and we saw that over his time with Maryland. I think MJ Morris a lot more raw. We could see a lot more errors with him. 3 more quarterbacks to go. Wisconsin's quarterback Tyler Van Dyke in 2023, he had an 85.9 offensive grade, an 85.3 passing grade, and he has a 65.6% passing completion rate last year. Now, 2,699 yards, not bad at all. 19 touchdowns, pretty solid. 12 interceptions. So he can have some issues turning the ball over, maybe playing too much hero ball, trying to take over. But if he can clean up the turnovers, he's not a bad get. He's definitely the second highest graded quarterback of all of these transfer quarterbacks coming in. So that's definitely, it has a lot of upside for Wisconsin. We'll see if they capitalize on that. There was a lot of upside with Mordecai last year, and I think he kind of dropped the ball a little bit last year when it came to the touting that he received in the offseason. We'll see if Tyler Van Dyke is the same or if he can live up to that hype. Then you have Curtis Rourke from Indiana, or with Indiana, grade of 78.9 offensive grade, 75.1 passing grade, 63% completions last year, 2,270 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Now, he definitely had flashes in the MAC with Ohio, and he's pairing with a solid head coach, but they haven't ever worked together. So it's going to be a learning process still. And with an Indiana team that's expected to struggle, I definitely think it could be a rough year for them. And then it comes to Max Brosmer, our quarterback here in Minnesota, 80.0 offensive grade, 79.9 passing grade, 64% completion, 3,498 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Now, the biggest thing will be getting up to Big Ten speed, because you can see the leadership right now. You can see the flashes. You can see the field IQ just from the practices alone that I've been able to witness him. Even from the pro day, I got to witness him. But if he can get up to the Big Ten speed prior to the season, he could have a major year of production and in the winning department. So hopefully he can. Now, when I look at that, some people might be like, oh, well, it's 1 year. No, he's not a 1 year wonder. In fact, his 2022 grading was better than what his last year was. He was an 82.4 offensive grade, 83.5 passing grade. So looking at the 11 quarterbacks that transferred into the Big Ten, Max grades out as a top 3 quarterback of the guys transferring in. Now, according to PFF's grading model, he is the 3rd best incoming graded quarterback by a healthy margin, behind only Dylan Gabriel and Tyler Van Dyke. And it may not be the recognizable or the sexy name to the outside fans, outside of the fan base, but this man puts up numbers and he takes care of the football, and that's all that matters when it comes to quarterback play. So if he can get up to Big Ten speed, the ceiling for this team could be a lot higher than they're getting credit for, and I am ready for it here in 2024. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about on today's show is the Gophers women's basketball team and what is coming up for them this offseason. That's coming up next. All right, Gophers fans, we're going to wrap this one up with some Gophers women's basketball talk. We'll keep this segment kind of brief so we make sure we don't go over that 30-minute episodes that we try to give you. But the Gophers closed on a kind of sad note. They got to the WNIT championship, which is phenomenal, which is awesome, especially knowing that Mara Braun re-aggravated the injury, wasn't able to finish out the season. And really, they had been fighting through injury adversity all year. And yet they got to postseason play and they got all the way to the championship. And then unfortunately, they got beat pretty bad in that championship game. And that extended playoff run, regardless of the loss, is going to have benefits for this team in the long run, because this is one of the youngest teams in the entire country and the youngest team in the entire Big Ten Conference. So having that deep playoff run and understanding what it takes to play in March is only going to be beneficial for this team in the long run. I am extremely excited by what is to come with this Gophers women's basketball team, but there will be changes that come this offseason. Now, in that national or WNIT championship game, the shooting was abysmal for the Gophers, plain and simple. That was a huge reason on how they got behind so quickly and how they could just never come back. They shot one of their worst games that they possibly could. Mara Braun wasn't in. Obviously, she had sat out the last couple games. But Amaya Battle, who had really stepped up in the scoring department and what have you, was held to 0 points, 0 of 6 shooting. Really, really tough game for her. And then on top of that, 8 turnovers. So they had her number in that game. The Gophers overall just really struggled from shooting from the floor, especially from the 3-point line. This might have been their worst shooting 3-point line or 3-point shooting night of the whole season. And it all adds up. You add up the turnovers, I believe it was 18, too many turnovers. You add up the missed opportunities, the missed shots, and all of a sudden you're falling behind and you're losing that opportunity. Now, that being said, this Gophers team, it's hard because you got outplayed, but it's hard to go into hostile environments night after night after night and expect to be at your best. Now, once you get to these semifinal and championship games, normally you play on a neutral site, but that's not the case in this WNIT, and it was all over the place. It was supposed to be a neutral site for this WNIT championship game, and all of a sudden they're putting it 30 minutes away from our opponent and 10 hours, 8 hours, what have you, away from Minnesota. So it was, once again, like a road environment. And after going from Wyoming all the way to Alabama, all the way flipping it over to basically St. Louis, it's tough. It's tough. And to hold your composure and to be at your best and play at a high level in hostile, hectic environments night after night. Now, that was a great learning experience for this Gophers team. And I think in the long run, it will be beneficial. But how do we turn the page? I think the first thing is adding to this roster. Now, you have a lot of young talent. You have some high upside, but we need someone who can create or score on their own when necessary. That is a big factor that this team missed once Mara Braun went down. Now, my battle stepped into that later in the season once we hit March, but that in-between stage, definitely we could not buy a bucket. So Amaya Battle can create her own shot. Mara Braun can create her own shot. But outside of that, we've struggled to create our own shots. You need another player who can create at a high level. One name, shout out to Ben over on Twitter. Definitely enjoy our chats over there. But Mara's Team USA teammate, Lucy Olson, who was with Villanova, has hit the transfer portal now. This is probably a way long shot for the Gophers to try and bring her here, but she would be the perfect type of player for Minnesota to bring in. So if Mara can work some magic, that would be the perfect timing, the perfect opportunity, because she averaged 23.3 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, 3.8 assists per game, and she is the type of player that can create on her own. She's a wing position, which this Gophers team could use, and on top of that, she could really flourish on the floor. We've seen her play with Mara Braun in that USA 3-on-3 basketball. Amaya wouldn't have to take on as much of a scoring load and could be more of a distributor who could threaten to score, and then it also spaces it out for Sophie Hart if necessary. And Grace and Mal both could be more played into those roles they're most comfortable in as they continue to develop. So I think overall she would be amazing. Shea Chesky coming from Penn State, she is a player that I have been a huge fan of in the Big Ten Conference. She hit the portal. Now, she's probably not a player Minnesota goes after if we're being realistic, because her role is very similar to Grace Groholski, in my opinion. And Grace Groholski is younger. She's been in the program. She did it at a more efficient level as a freshman. So I think overall, you probably stay away from that one. But when you are looking at what this Gophers team is going to do, the biggest thing is they probably need another big to help relieve Sophie of some minutes or foul trouble or what have you, and to give her breathers. I think that would be massive for this Gophers team. And then also adding one more player who can create their own shot efficiently and effectively whether it's on the floor with Mara and Amaya or whether it's on the floor when those two are off. I think someone who can create on their own is massive. So that's what the Gophers will be looking to do, I'm hoping, in this offseason. Now, one last thing I had to say was I saw someone on Twitter claimed that Minnesota women's basketball, if they have a quiet offseason, they will finish as the last place team in the Big Ten Conference. Like, bro, you couldn't be more far off. Like, just a horrible take. Then they went on to blast Mallory Heyer, Grace Groholski, Nehemiah Holloway, and basically saying they're not D1 level basketball players. Like, just an absurd take. Just like Mal was an all-conference honorable mention, 5th in the conference in rebounds, and had 7 double-doubles. Grace was the Big Ten freshman, all-freshman team, shot the 3-ball better than most freshmen in the entire country, and just a baffling take. Just say that you just look at the scoring and that's all you care about. You're telling on yourself, my friend. And honestly, that type of stuff has to stop. So hopefully you can go on and mute those people over on Twitter and get excited about year 2. I am very excited. I think that it's only going to be more instinctual. It's going to get quicker. It's going to get faster and more efficient. And I can't wait to see what Don does. And that all starts with this offseason. We'll keep you posted on what happens here at Locked On Golden Gophers. Until next time, I will see you then. Roll the bows, guy. You might go Gophers as always. And don't forget to hit subscribe.